Prevent breast cancer the easier way. This video reveals the number one thing you must do to prevent breast cancer, and in a moment too, we shall reveal the vitamin that will help prevent breast cancer. Want to transform your health for free? Simple, just subscribe and click the bell icon to get notification of all our new videos upon release. In an interview, Susan Waddell-Ellis, PhD, discusses breast cancer as an unnecessary U.S. epidemic and how to help prevent it, which is the topic of her book, Busting Breast Cancer: 5 Simple Steps to Keep Breast Cancer Out of Your Body. This year alone, an expected 300,000 women in the U.S. will be diagnosed with invasive breast cancer. Another 50,000 are projected to be diagnosed with non-invasive breast cancer, which in all likelihood isn't cancer at all. Waddell-Ellis has a graduate degree in Energy Economics and Political Development, MALD, and a PhD in Women's Studies with a focus on women's autobiographical writing. This really means that I am an investigative reporter, she says, and so I've come to this with a very innocent, independent mind. The inspiration behind the book was Waddell-Ellis' experience of losing several friends to recurrent metastatic breast cancer, meaning cancer that was successfully treated at an early stage, only to later return as a terminal stage or metastatic disease. Between 20% and 40% of women who have been successfully treated in the United States today will end up with recurrent metastatic breast cancer, which means an early death sentence for most women, she says. And I just got very angry. I love to investigate new topics. I've always been a change maker throughout my whole career. I've just followed and done what I wanted to do. And this, I just fell into it and wouldn't let it go. Breast cancer treatment is a for-profit industry. The for-profit cancer industry makes a fortune overdiagnosing breast cancer cases and then treating women with inflammatory and toxic remedies that increase your risk of developing real cancer. So overall, the financial component is a motivating catalyst in the US for much of what we're seeing within the breast cancer industry, including that so-called Breast Cancer Awareness Month that can be translated as Get Your Mammogram Month. The reason I wanted to do this book was really to teach women how to avoid getting breast cancer. Once you have a mammogram, you can sometimes end up being unnecessarily diagnosed and treated. And then that becomes incredibly expensive and harmful. As I said, 20% to 40% of women who are being diagnosed and treated for an early-stage breast cancer end up being treated for recurrent metastatic breast cancer, which means they're spending an inordinate amount of money. These metastatic drugs that have been developed are not even meant to stop the disease, they have been developed to extend your life by a matter of months. The reason why it's so important for women to read the book and understand the 5 simple steps in busting breast cancer is because most of these steps go against everything that the American Cancer Society is telling us, that Susan G. Komen is telling us, that in most cases, our regular primary care practitioners are telling us. And women have a much harder time questioning authority than men. And so, as breast cancer has now become this epidemic that surrounds us, women have got to learn how to look at the facts, learn to be brave and question authority, and take risks by going against these authorities. From early ages, women are much more terrified of going against authority. And in order to protect ourselves and knock down the risk of breast cancer by 80% or more, it means a woman is going to have to stand up to the American Cancer Society and say, yes, I'm going to have a clinical breast exam. Yes, I'm going to do breast self-exams again. No, I don't want a mammogram. All of these things that go against what women are being taught right now by the cancer industry. I've done extensive articles on mammography in the past, so much so that the state of Illinois Medical Board tried to remove my license, even though I wasn't selling anything related to breast cancer. I was just telling people about the dangers of mammograms and disputing a study published in the New England Journal of Medicine. I appealed and sued the medical board in the Illinois State Supreme Court and won, on grounds of First Amendment freedom of speech, which is progressively being destroyed in real time in 2021. But that just goes to show the lengths to which the industry will go to protect the conventional narrative, a narrative that is ultimately harming more women than it's helping. Cancer is a lifestyle disease. As noted by Waddell-Ellis, statistical studies reveal there are a number of lifestyle and environmental issues that raise a woman's breast cancer risk, including birth control drugs and vitamin D3 deficiency. Yet, the medical industry still has no answer as for why breast cancer occurs. They treat it like it's a mystery that no one knows anything about, which simply isn't true. In 2013, Waddell discovered Thomas Seyfried's book, The Metabolic Theory of Cancer, which I have highlighted in many previous articles. Seyfried's theory on the origin of that first cancer cell allowed her to finally connect dozens of statistical studies on the risks of birth control drugs, progestin menopausal drugs, mammograms, biopsies, environmental toxins and more. She was finally able, for the first time, to develop a clear set of biologically based effective breast cancer prevention strategies for individual women. Women need to understand that we can prevent this disease, probably 80%, if not more, of the time, she says. Lifestyle variables reviewed in Waddell's book include the danger of chemical progestin drugs, toxic/unbalanced levels of estrogen from excess body fat, and high cortisol levels from chronic long-term stress. These are all significant assaults that contribute to the suffocation of breast cells' mitochondria. This suffocation is the first step in the creation of that first cancer cell. Processed foods are another culprit that need to be avoided, foods high in refined and hydrogenated vegetable oils in particular, as they are loaded with an omega-6 fat called linoleic acid, LA. Minimizing LA to pre-1850 levels, or 1% to 2% of your total daily calorie intake, which is 90% to 95% lower than what the average American consumes, is crucial. I believe it's probably the most significant metabolic poison in our diet. Prevention begins with shedding excess body fat. Topping Waddell's list of prevention strategies is shedding excess body fat by following a low-carb or ketogenic lifestyle. This type of daily eating helps lower the production of excess or unbalanced estrogen from fat cells, which reduces long-term mitochondrial damage. Unknown to many, excess body fat creates an enzyme called aromatase, an enzyme required in the production of natural estrogen. You need to be careful about the types of fat you eat, however. Going on a low-carb/high-fat diet will help only if you limit your intake of toxic omega-6 fat, linoleic acid, to less than 5% of total calorie intake. That takes us back to Seyfried's metabolic theory of cancer. We now understand that what causes that first cancer cell to happen, be that a breast cancer cell or a brain cancer cell, is assaults on the mitochondria, the power batteries within your cells, that basically suffocate them. So all of these things are suffocating the mitochondria, and when you have unbalanced estrogen to progesterone, or the chemical progestin, these are all toxic conditions that suffocate, that harm those mitochondria. In Chapter 4 in the book, I talk about the importance of not taking birth control drugs or Prempro, a combination of menopausal relief drugs, or even having a progestin-laced IUD inserted, because progestin has now been shown to not only accelerate breast cancer, but it also has the potential of initiating breast cancer. In short, excess or unbalanced estrogen will increase a woman's risk for breast cancer. That's why many who are diagnosed with breast cancer find they are not metabolizing or eliminating this processed or used estrogen efficiently, causing an imbalance. Waddell recommends getting a hormone balancing test to make sure your estrogen and progesterone levels are properly balanced and, if not, get an estrogen metabolite test done to see if you're efficiently eliminating this now processed or excess estrogen. If your ability to eliminate your processed estrogen is sluggish, there are supplements and other strategies that can help boost your ability to efficiently eliminate your used estrogen, so you don't end up with toxic levels. Ideally, you'll want to measure all three types of natural estrogen your body can make: estrone, estradiol, and estriol. The ratios among these three are also important. The dangers of progestin. Progesterone is a helpful and important natural hormone. Progestin, a chemical that offers a few attributes of natural progesterone, however, can initiate and accelerate breast cancer. Intuitively, it makes sense that synthetic hormones might be more dangerous than naturally occurring ones made by your body, and in fact they are. Waddell explains. In 2010, there was an incredibly important study that has gotten buried. The lead researcher was Joseph Penninger. On that international study team of about 12 people, one is now the CEO and president of Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. The researchers spent 10 years working with mice in preclinical settings, trying to figure out why women who take progestin-based drugs, be they birth control drugs or menopausal drugs, have anywhere from a 26% to an 8-fold increased risk of developing breast cancer. They finally published a study in 2010 that basically explained, in some more detail, but not totally, how the progestin pulls out or activates something called RANKL, which is a protein. The RANKL, apparently, though they don't say these words, can suffocate the mitochondria in a woman's breast cell, initiating that first cancer cell. The sad thing is that no researchers in the field of breast cancer prevention ever cite this study. They're not aware of it for some reason. But it was published in October of 2010 in Nature magazine, which we all know is a very significant, well-known scientific journal. Tragically, the medical and scientific professions continue to conflate the terms progestin and progesterone, ignoring the fact that these substances are not the same. Chemically, they are very different. So, when reading studies, you have no way of knowing whether a researcher is talking about progestin, the chemical that causes and accelerates breast cancer, or natural progesterone, which when balanced with natural estrogen, does not cause a problem. In fact, natural progesterone appears to work as a tumor suppressor. It's even used in men with prostate cancer, with significant success. Proper administration of hormones. The delivery system of estrogen and/or progesterone is a third issue that plays a role. The worst delivery method is oral delivery, as the hormone must go through your digestive system and liver before it reaches your bloodstream. Transdermal application is also problematic because, over time, your body becomes increasingly resistant to it as it builds up in your cells. The most ideal delivery method is transmucosally, where you apply the cream or suppository either into your vagina or rectum. This will bypass liver metabolism and get the hormone directly into your blood. The importance of vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 is another crucial factor for cancer prevention. As noted by Wadiels, studies show a vitamin D3 level of 40 nanograms per milliliter is protective against prostate and liver cancer, but for breast cancer, you need a level of at least 60 nanograms per milliliter, 100 nanomole per liter. That 60 nanograms per milliliter becomes the magical number when a woman is trying to protect herself from developing breast cancer, she says. Indeed, several studies suggest vitamin D optimization alone can knock your breast cancer risk down by about 80%. Sensible sun exposure is the best way to optimize your level, but for a vast majority of people, a supplement is typically required to reach and maintain a level between 60 nanograms per milliliter and 80 nanograms per milliliter, 100 nanomole per liter to 150 nanomole per liter, year-round. Latitude tends to be a limiting factor because most people in the US are unable to get significant vitamin D from the sun between September and May. Even in the middle of summer, you have to spend time outside in a bathing suit, not fully clothed, in order for it to work. Regardless of how you're getting your vitamin D3, the key is to test your level once or twice a year. This is the only way to ensure that what you're doing is providing you with the vitamin D you need for optimal health and disease prevention. If you don't know your D3 blood level, you have no way of knowing whether your immune system is strong enough to protect you from any fast-growing developing breast cancer cells or not. Keep in mind that if you are obese, your body will store about half the vitamin D3 you ingest in your fat cells, which means you'll need higher doses than someone of normal weight. If you take 5,000 IUs of D3 a day, it could be that your body is only able to utilize half of that. The other half is being stored in your fat cells. What some functional medicine physicians are finding is that when women or men start to lose weight, once they lose 15% of their weight, the fat cells let loose the stored D3, and their D3 blood level goes shooting up, Wadiels says. Many breast cancer cases really aren't breast cancer. As mentioned earlier, mammograms can get you into trouble. One simple mammogram can really take you down a bad path, Wadiels says. First of all, you're compressing your breast tissue, which in itself can cause tissue damage, and if you do have a tumor, that tumor could potentially be broken apart, resulting in metastatic breast cancer. ductal carcinoma in situ, or DCIS, is not actually a tumor. It's not invasive. It's not cancer. Studies suggest only about 5% of DCIS will eventually, a decade or more down the line, turn into cancer. But probably the major concern that I have with mammograms is the fact that they are the only way the cancer industry can diagnose if a woman has atypical cells or a tiny indolent tumor that may never grow, Wadiels says. The term atypical cells later became known as ductal carcinoma, in situ, or DCIS, a far more frightening term than atypical cells. Fear sells, and this is true in the cancer industry as well. DCIS is not actually a tumor. It's not invasive. It's not cancer. Studies suggest only about 5% of DCIS will eventually, a decade or more down the line, turn into cancer. Yet DCIS has now been renamed yet again as Stage 0 breast cancer. I have met so many women and they go, "I had breast cancer, but happily, they found it early. I'm fine." And I say to them, "What stage was it?" Sometimes they don't know, but if they do know, they might say, "Stage 0, and the first thing I want to say to them is, "You did not have breast cancer. You never had breast cancer." But the problem is they were treated as if they had breast cancer. So a biopsy, often using fine needle aspiration, was done, which inflames the tissue, which can then create cancer. Sometimes they had surgery. I've met women who have had double mastectomies because they had DCIS. It's a travesty. People are being given all of these reasons to be fearful about breast cancer. My book becomes a unique piece of merchandise in the store because it's saying, no, you don't have to fear it anymore. There are ways that you can stop it before it starts. And with recurrent metastatic breast cancer, there actually are ways that are non-toxic, that can literally make metastatic cells go away. And there's even a case study from Turkey in my book of how they have used strictly non-toxic metabolic therapies to remove all of the metastatic cells from this 30-year-old woman. And as long as she was willing to participate and stay on her low-carb diet and have her non-toxic therapies every few months, she stayed clear. To discover why biopsies are dangerous and the drugs to avoid to prevent breast cancer, click the link below.